everyone, and welcome to Baseball Talk Radio. It's the special after the World Series show. And Gary, we know who the World Series champs are now, the Chicago Cubs.
And hello, Rich. I'm a little nasally and a little under the weather, but here and yeah, the Cubbies did it. They broke the string, and now they're a regular baseball team like everybody else.
Yep, they're starting the slate clean as World Series winners. The first time since 1908 that they won the World Series, and what a great series it was. It went to 7 games. It had a rain delay towards the end of the game. I didn't see it. I fell asleep. As most people know on the East Coast, if you do have to get up early the next day, it's very difficult, especially when a game's got a rain delay. It's going into extra innings. But I'll tell you, that was probably one of the better Game 7s that ever could have been.
Well, Rich, they're calling it a classic. I think the only reason it's a classic because Cleveland tied it with a 3-run home run. The game was not one of the, let's say, it's not it wasn't a game that you would record and show in fundamental baseball videotape. It just was very sloppy, errors all over the place, miscues, and to be honest, some really head scratching managerial moves by both teams. Terry Francona did not bring his A game to that. And really, Joe Madden taking out Hendricks, who was dominating the game, and putting in Lester, he almost blew it right there. And, in my opinion, I think the rain delay really saved the Cubs. They were on the ropes. They were done. Chapman was finished. He had nothing left in the tank. He was finished. And I think the rain delay gave them a break. It gave them a chance to recoup, get their heads on straight, and go out there for the 10th. And without that, I think Cleveland had to win it in the 9th. They had the bottom of the 9th. They had the chance there. As I said, Chapman was on the ropes. He was, throwing sliders at 78, 80 miles an hour, and that's not Chapman. He was exhausted, but in the end, I think Cleveland really had nobody else to go to as well. They were all exhausted. Kluber was definitely exhausted to start the game. And, Chicago got the better of them in that 10th, and that was it. And yet, again, they almost pulled it out in the bottom of the 10th, scoring a run and having a guy on. Just couldn't push it another run across.
Yeah, it was an exciting finish. As you said, Madden was a little second guess there, so to speak, as was Francona. Both managers took their pitchers out early in the game. I guess for Francona, you could say it was pretty much warranted. But in the case of Madden, as you said, he just wanted to put somebody in that he thought was going to be the stopper, so to speak, with Lester. Maybe he rushed him an inning too soon. I think that was probably the case. Maybe Kendrick should have went out for one more inning at least. He wasn't quite out of gas yet in any means. But, the manager's got to do what he thinks is best for the team. And you could see as they panned over the camera to him several times especially when the Indians tied the game, he just looked sick about it. That game could have went either way. You could have, like you said, it could have been the Indians, the world champions this year. It just so happens that the Cubs held on. They managed to win this game miraculously. As you said, they had a sloppy game. Baez at second base was unbelievably bad during this game. Twice he made miscues. It looked like he was out to blow the game for the Cubs there for a little bit. He did come back and get a home run, a solo shot, which sort of made up for that. I remember sending a tweet out, thanks very much, Baez. You made up for, a little bit of what you did so far tonight. and that's a young player trying to do too much.
Hmm.
Uh, Made two errors. As you said, Gary, could have went either way. The Cubs ended up with the crown, and somebody's got to win, somebody's got to lose. But as you said, what a thrilling World Series it was. There had to be a winner. If it were the Indians, I probably would be saying the same thing. Uh, I went to bed before it was over. The Cubs had a 6-3 lead, and I knew that lead was not safe. As you said, they just seemed like a building that was starting to crumble. Was about to fall apart. Chapman came in. He was sweating. He was out of gas from the get-go. After about 5 pitches, he was completely out of gas, sweating. Had no business being on the mound. He did get a blown save and a rare win in that category in that game, Game 7. What a thrilling win! When you see a blown save win combination for a pitcher, things were screwed up.
Yeah, yeah, that's for sure. And like you said, Chapman was out of gas, but I think the whole Cleveland pitching staff was out of gas as well. And it just goes to show you that the importance of having a solid pitching staff, a solid 5 or 6 man pitching staff that you can rely on, and just the fact that they don't push these pitchers anymore. I mean, 5 or 6 innings and then they pull them out, and it's kind of crazy in a way. And I think this World Series more than last year's World Series absolutely showed that. I mean, by Game 7, the Indians had nothing left in their pitching staff. As I said, Kluber was exhausted and went. And they had really nothing to back him up. Even Miller was shot. Miller was
Yeah.
out of gas, and you figured he'd be the guy, and I think it just shows up that these guys don't throw enough anymore. They don't work them enough. And I know with all the injuries, and we've discussed that ad nauseum with the Tommy John surgery and everything, but either you gotta find a new, 2 or 3 extra pitchers or something to add to your roster just in the World Series, or you're going in with guys that have pitched 200 innings, or you've used a certain way all year, and then you can't, ask them to go 7 innings or so. So I'm not sure that the whole idea of getting these strong bullpens and having guys go 7, 8, 9, is good for the game, because I think this was a perfect example and showed you now. Again, Chapman pitched 1 inning all year, every game. And now you're asking him all of a sudden to go 3 innings or so, 2, 3 innings every game he was going practically. So as you say, he was gassed by Game 7, and like I said earlier, the Cleveland had to get him in that ninth because he was done. He had nothing left. And look, they didn't, in his defense, he got through the inning. They didn't get to him, and that may have cost them the world championship right there.
Yeah, I think it did. Just a tough end for the Indians. They did tie the game, though. They very much could have won that Game 7. After I saw the replay, it was amazing that they tied the game up late like that. Just another hit and a couple more runs, a key hit somewhere in the middle of that, and they could have pulled this victory out. But it's now one for the ages. The Cubs not winners since 1908, one of the longest droughts in baseball championship history. And I'm glad for the Cubs. I'm glad that they broke that ice finally. The millions of Cub fans that have been waiting for this moment across the country and even locally in Chicago there. The parade was held today in Chicago, and I just saw a tweet come through that there is one of the 7th largest crowds gathered anywhere in human history That was a quote from Fox 32 News there tonight, saying that over 5 million people showed up for the Chicago Cubs parade and rally today in and around the Chicago area. The celebration crowd even beat out 3.5 million people who went to Rod Stewart's 1994 concert in Rio. So today, another history was broken. More than 7 million people, and I'm looking at a photo here of the Cubs stage that they had set up in a big, huge park there in Chicago, and there was just thousands and thousands of people taking place and taking part in that celebration there in Chicago today.
We've had some big ones in Philly and New York as well. So, it was their turn, and they did it up, and that's the main thing.
Yep, and they had a lot of celebrities in attendance. Of course, for the Cubs, I would think the biggest celeb was Bill Murray making his rounds, singing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" there at Wrigley Field. He was quite the character during this World Series.
Well, certainly was, and they're kind of known for their characters with Harry Carey, the late Harry Carey, and all these guys they brought in to sing the seventh inning stretch song, "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" and all of that. So it was as you say, Rich. It was an entertaining series, and the Cubbies won, and now they're on top of the world, and now they joined the ranks of just another ball team that's gonna have pissed off fans if they don't win every year, and we know how that gets, and you just hope it doesn't ruin them now. And one thing that they always had was they always had that lovable lose, and they had the most loyal fans. Well, now the younger fans have a taste of winning, and they're not going to be so. They may not understand the whole lore of being a Cubs fan now that they're winning, now that they won, and when they lose next year, which they probably will because the Mets are going to win next year, so it will be it'll be a heartbreaker for them. But get used to it because that's the way the game goes. You don't win, you don't make the playoffs every year, you don't get to the World Series every year, and that's what makes it special.
That's true. It's a tough event to get to, probably one of the toughest in sports. And as you said, there was talk right after the series that this could be the start of a Cubs type of dynasty. A little early for dynasty talk, but I have heard it already. And people say that in reference to the Indians. The Indians sort of had to win this year. They don't seem to have a ball club that's a powerhouse, even though, what can you say? They made it to the World Series, but they didn't seem to have that infrastructure like the Cubs have with the good hitters, the good pitching. But all that cost a lot of money, too. The Cubs had a $175 million payroll last year, which isn't chicken feed. It's top 4 in the whole league. And now to keep some of these players who are young, they're going to have to spend a lot of money. And that's the game of baseball. You either keep spending money and you keep all these stars, or you're going to have to find a way to deal one or two of them off and make a concession here or there. So I saw it in Philadelphia after the Phillies won. They couldn't keep everybody. They had a $200 million payroll. It had to come down a little bit. So you have to lose a piece of the puzzle. And sometimes that's an important piece of the puzzle. The Cubs have a lot of younger players that are very good right now. They're in a driver's seat. If you had to mention one team that might be ready for a dynasty, it might be the Cubs. So we'll keep our eyes for that for next year, for 2017. And Gary, I don't know. It's about 150 days to opening day here. I've been seeing some graphics going up from the different teams. Only 153 games to opening day. Just doesn't
Is,
seem to be that long, does it?
is that opening day or is that training camp? If that's spring training.
I think I read opening day, 150 days.
You're right.
I would have to look into it. You figure
It
30 days in a
is.
month, 4 months. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
about right.
yeah. So that means it's about, let's say, 90 days, 92 days to pitches and catches, maybe something along that, maybe a little shorter. Who knows? Trying to do quick math here, and not one of my strong points, but yeah. Just to get back what you were saying about the free agents and the players, it's you took the words right out of my mouth, Rich. That's going to become a problem now, and right away that they're going to have it right off the bat, a big problem because Aroldis Chapman, their closer, is a free agent, and this is the chance you take. You want to win, and to stay on top, you got to keep those key guys. But they're going to have competition because the Yankees are interested in getting him back. He's interested in coming back to New York. So they could possibly lose a closer there, and then they got to go out and find a closer. There's not too many as good as Chapman around, as we know. So also, their center fielder Dexter Fowler, who was an All-Star this year, I believe. He's a free agent, and he's going to be looking to get his payday. And look, they've got plenty of money, but you can't go crazy either. You've got to keep some flexibility. You don't want to become the Yankees, and they could, if they ever became the Yankees of the National League, then they're going to go from the most beloved team to one of the most hated teams pretty quick. And sometimes that's the way it is, and sometimes it's winning that brings that about. And I just heard a kid today about a 15-year-old, 13-year-old saying, "My generation is now we're the Cubs are champions," and I thought, well, don't get too used to that because Kansas City won 1 out of 2, so. I'm sure the kids in Kansas City that were not around for the last one thought they were going to be champions again, and they didn't make the playoffs. So, all kinds of crazy things can happen, Rich, and enjoy it at the moment now because you don't know how long it's going to last.
Yes, indeed. Well, we're talking baseball here on November 4th. About 7:45 in the East, and I want to welcome our live listeners here as we're doing the show, streaming it live as the time we're doing it here on baseballpodcast.net, the baseballtalkradio.com, the same website. I want to welcome aboard all those listeners that are listening to the show live. If you'd like to listen to the podcast version of the Baseball Talk Radio Show, just find us on iTunes, and you can find us over at Stitcher Radio as well. I want to welcome all those listeners that joined us the last couple shows throughout the World Series. We had a great time talking with the Cubs podcast, Ivy Envy, last week, live right before one of the games. And we'd like to invite you to listen to that show and find out what was going on at that time. And also Ed Kasputis, a couple shows ago over in Cleveland. He was representing the Indians, letting us know what the mood was there in Cleveland as the games were about to begin. And Gary, you can't take nothing away from the Indians. They had a great season. You can almost call them co-champions of the season if you would. Just a wonderful convergence there for the Cleveland fans.
Yeah, they had a great season, and unfortunately, they lost 2 of their starting pitchers towards the end of the season, and that might have come back to hurt them. They got one of them back, but who knows? what percentage of health was he at. He did manage to pitch a couple of times, but only in relief, and so that kind of hurt them in a way. But look, the guys that they used really did pitch well. I mean, Tomlin pitched good. Can't complain. Even that one kid they used in the championship series, he pitched really good. His name escapes me. The lefty. He did a good job. So they pulled them quickly. Francona had a quick hook on all of these guys, and but they look, they got there. They got it to game 7. Kind of shocking to believe that with a 3-1 lead, they couldn't pull it when 2 games at home left. They couldn't win one more game, and that's kind of a shock to the system. You figured once they were up 3-1, it was a no-brainer that they would take it, and to drop 3 in a row like that at that point in the season. But again, I just think the pitching was, I don't want to say overused, but it definitely was used a lot, and I think it backed up and bit them.
Yeah, and as you said, they did drop a 3-1 lead in the World Series, but that's the great thing about baseball. And not just because the Cubs won. I was rooting for the Cubs, but even had it been in reverse, I still think that's the great thing about baseball. And even in Game 7, it looked like the Indians were going to lose in the 8th inning. They were down 6-3. They got 1 run, made it 6-4. Then somebody came up and hit a home run with a guy on. They tied it up 6-6. So here they were ahead 3-1. They looked like they were going to lose in the 8th inning, and you've got a 1 inning left in the game, and they tied it up. So that's the beautiful part about baseball. It's a game that's not controlled by time. The buzzer's not going to beat you. You can even go into extra innings. 3 outs is going to beat you, but that's what I really love about the game of baseball. It's not controlled by time.
And though they keep trying to, Rich, they want to make the games quicker. Well, this World Series definitely didn't improve things in that area. Games were very long and very late. I think baseball has to do something about the replay system. They have to make it quicker. It's too long, and there were a ton of them in this series, and they're just too long. And I don't know what the answer is, but I think that these umpires, if the ones they have they keep saying Chelsea, especially in a World Series, because there's only one game that they can be watching. I think they have to have 3 guys looking at replays as whenever anything comes up controversial, those should be kicked in right away. And those 3 guys or 4 guys or 5 or however many you want, have them there looking right away before there's even an appeal. And then if that'll cut some of the time in, and the commercials are just ridiculous too, Rich. It's just it's too much. It takes up too much time. I mean, they bring in a relief pitcher, there's a commercial. They take out a pitcher, there's a commercial. He finishes warm-ups, there's a commercial. It's too much. It's too much, and that's why they're losing the kids in a way, because when we were kids, the games were played in the daytime. I know you're not going to get that again, but I mean, this is nuts with the past midnight. Start the games at 7. And, they're going to go into prime. To me, it would make more sense because people aren't going to watch it. If they start watching the games are going to go into prime time. So you're going to hold that audience. That's why the Super Bowl starts at 5:00. I mean, they have a crazy starting time, but it rolls into prime time, and that's what I think baseball has to look at starting a game at 7, so it rolls into the prime time at 8, and they hold the audience, and hopefully the game will be done by 8 o'clock. I'm sorry, not 8 o'clock. That would be great. But the game will be over by 10.
11 o'clock at the worst.
At the worst, and at least kids would be able to watch a great deal of it. And if it's a hometown, I'm certainly sure that the parents would let them stay up if you're really into the game. But it's they have to do something, and I don't think blaming it on the players and everything when it's their own fault. It's their own greed and their own money that's delaying the games.
Yeah, and I agree with you 100% that the games in the East shouldn't really start later than 7 p.m. Of course, if you're looking at the West Coast, then you're backing it up a few hours, 3 hours from there. That's kind of an early start for the West Coast, 4 o'clock. Maybe that's the way they're looking at it. They're trying to grab the best of both coasts, so to speak, with the most populations. But, it's unfair to the East when they start so late because you can't finish a game sometimes, especially if you have to be up early for work. I know in my own social network there was a husband and wife that are related to me, and the wife ragged the husband because he went to sleep on Game 7. Well, he had to get up early. and that's just, it's not an excuse. You have a job to do. You have to keep bread and milk on the table and eggs. You have to go to work. You just cannot watch the game. But that's the shame of it all. The real fan does not get to see the game as it happens live.
And it's not even going to bed either. It's you could be sitting there watching the game and fall asleep because it's getting late and you've worked all day and gotten up early, and so it goes beyond just the fact of physically going to bed. You can fall asleep during a game, and again, I don't want to rag on the announcers too much, but. I mean, I like John Smalls, but Joe Buck is.
Joe Buck is Joe Buck.
Yeah, let's just leave it at that.
I thought he was rooting for the Indians most of the series, especially Game 7. But that's the interesting thing. I'd like to hear your take about who you thought he was rooting for in Game 7.
I have to be honest. Most of the time, I turned off the sound and didn't even listen. Just watched the pictures and pretended I was at the game. And had multitasked doing something else that I needed to do, so I couldn't really tell you who I thought he was rooting for. But if probably in Chicago they thought he was rooting for Cleveland, and in Cleveland they thought he was rooting for Chicago. So it's not an easy job, but I think part of the problem is that really. Having a national broadcaster is, even with all the internet, there's just something still lacking. You just know as a fan that they don't know as much about your team as you think they should know, and I think that's it's just, and he's not well liked. I mean, the ratings are through the roof, but that's because it was the Cubs and the Cleveland and two teams that hadn't won in so long that it was going to be a story either way.
Yes, indeed. And come to think of stories, that's one great thing that comes out of the World Series is the great baseball stories that are told. A few of them come to mind. One was when Bill Murray was walking by the ticket window in Cleveland for Game 6. There was a Cubs fan up at the ticket window, just thought she would go up and ask if they had any extra tickets for sale. Of course, she was told no, the game was sold out. She went to leave the window, and along came Bill Murray strolling by and actually turned around and gave her a ticket to the game. So imagine the delight on her face getting into the game, but no less, she sat right next to Bill Murray as well. So, just little stories like that come to mind, and just funny things that make you smile.
Well, that could be bad and good sitting next to Bill Murray during a Cubs game. So you don't know, but nice story. And, I don't remember seeing the Marlins guy. Was he there as much this time?
I don't think so. He might have been shut out of that
Oh,
game.
thank goodness. It's a
Yeah, he
little.
probably drew the line. I think they were getting anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 a seat for regular seats. God forbid you want to sit behind home plate. I don't think he could have afforded that. But yeah, there was another great story with Joe Madden and his father, who had passed away. Joe Madden had carried his hat along with him most of the season in his travel bag, and actually brought his hat out in the dugout and put it in his back pocket for the 10th inning and the ninth inning. And he just, even had it on the interview for the Fields when he was asked about it. He produced it right out of his back pocket and said, "Here's my dad's hat." That pulls on the heartstrings a little bit, and just makes you really appreciate the game and what it has to offer, and some of the great stories that come out of it.
Yeah, it certainly does, Rich, and we'll be probably hearing more all winter on that, and we're waiting now for the hot stove to start up and throw some fire in it, because there's going to be a lot of rumors this year. And December 5th is the winter meetings, and that's what we have to look forward to now, less than a month away, or a little bit more than a month away. But yeah, that's what happens now. The business of baseball comes in as we, get done with one thing, and now we start to look for 2017. And I see the Phillies already made a move by getting Pat Neshek from the Houston Astros for a player to be named later or cash consideration. So Phillies aren't wasting any time, Rich.
Yeah, Phil's going out there getting first taste of the hot stove action there. They also have to make a decision on Jeremy Hellickson. Will they offer him $17.5 million for one season, let him walk? Or will they just offer that money to him, hoping he won't accept the one-year deal, and then the Phillies will get a draft pick for him? That's up in the air. You can go over to my blog at fightingphillies.com, read a little bit about that. I have a post on there about that situation today in the blog. But that we're actually listener supported. So if you want to go over to patreon.com, and that's a great place for artists, people that are making video shows and audio shows, all kinds of artists that you can support, like Gary and I here on the Baseball Talk Radio Show. Just go to patreon.com/baseball talk, and you can see our page there. We have a number of rewards where if you pledge a certain amount a month, we're going to give you a reward for it. So, Gary, I didn't get a chance to tell you this during the past week, but I've updated our rewards list. I just wanted to go over it real quick with our listeners. You can donate anywhere from $1 or more per month. If you go with a $5 per month donation for our show, we're going to mention you in the show notes online, and we're going to send you a Baseball Talk Radio Show bumper sticker. So we want to get some of them out there to the listeners. Go for a $7 or more per month award here, pledge for us. We're going to send you a bumper sticker. You're going to have special access to our live video broadcasts. And we're going to also mention your name as a supporter of the show towards the end of our podcast each week. So we're going to give a little bit back to our patrons that decide to sponsor us. Here's another one. $10 or more a month, our Hank Aaron level. You're a loyal listener, so you're going to get a bumper sticker. You're going to get special access to the live shows. And if you stay with us for 6 months or more at this level, which is $10 a month, we're going to get you a Baseball Talk Radio t-shirt out to you. So we want to let those great prizes get sent out to our listeners. I know some of the other broadcasts have a specific core of listeners that always donate to the shows. And then we as creators can put that money back into the show and offer you greater entertainment, some hosting, things like that. A few of the podcasts even have get-togethers and stuff. So if we can get that big, you never know. We might have our own get-togethers, Gary. But it's a great way to sponsor the show over at Patreon. That's patreon.com/baseball talk.
Sounds great, Rich, and can't wait to see what happens.
Yep. So please stop by there, and if you can't remember that website or can't find it for whatever reason, go over to our main website. It's mlbthisweek.com. You can catch a link right to the Patreon site. I'll take you right there. So, Gary, it's been great talking about this World Series. I know you're under the weather, and I appreciate you were able to join us this week. I also wanted to mention before we close out that we also have a YouTube video of the show that we faithfully record every show as well. Tonight we're doing the show on Skype, giving the Google Hangouts a little bit of rest. So we hope you enjoyed tonight's show, and it was a great time chatting with you about the World Series, Gary. I can't wait for, as you said, the hot stove action to heat up.
And Rich, the next time we do the show, we'll have a new president probably. So, though we never know the way this race is going, who knows? It's so close. So get out and vote on Tuesday and enjoy the day off. If you're off like I am, enjoy it.
Yes, indeed. And I'll actually have the day off too. For Election Day, first time in many years. But, I echo your sentiment. Regardless of who you want there in the office, get out there and register your vote, even though, as we're told, the Electoral College makes the decision. At least you'll get some exercise and get out and start pressing those buttons a little bit.
Yeah, and you still got a chance to affect the election by especially you guys in Pennsylvania and North Carolina and Florida and Georgia and all the other states there. We're pretty well sewn up here, Rich. In New York and New Jersey, and not in the way we'd like to be, but that's another story. But we'll go out anyway.
Yes, we will. Well, we'll talk to you after the presidential election. We'll soon have more to talk about, so much more in baseball as the new contracts get signed, movements, players going here or there, just a ton of stuff to talk about in the off season. So please stay with us all off season and check out the website over at baseballtalkradio.com. Over 30 of the best baseball talk shows, independent talk shows, just like the one you're listening to. And we thank you for listening.
See you soon, everybody.